So it's the morning after, the night before, as it were. What does that mean? Does it mean John and I were out on the lash last night? No, that's not what it means. A political, I suppose, and democratic hand grenade was thrown yesterday in the blocking of Maria Steen from the upcoming Irish presidential race. Some people are saying she wasn't blocked. Some people are saying she should never have been there. But a lot of people are absolutely cheesed off. That's putting it mildly. And there's been a surprising backlash, in my opinion, to this. People have got actually pretty angry about it. And I want to talk about that this morning, following on from a conversation yesterday with the wonderful Mark Anthony. I want to get my other chum's opinion on this one here this morning, the one and only John Wilson. I nearly called you John Waters there. John Wilson from Cavan. John, how you doing today?
I'm very good, Rick. And to compare me with John Waters would be akin to comparing a prince with a pauper. But I can say no more than that. Can I just say, I want to thank your viewers for their kind comments. I am not worthy, but I really appreciate them. And I am really very, very grateful.
You get a lot of, I don't know if you read through them all, but I mean, like when you come on, and when people come on, there's a lot of comments are dropped there, and some of them get lost. Unfortunately, I can't keep up with them all, but I don't know that I've seen any negative comments about you in all the times you've came on. Genuinely, I don't think I've seen anything negative said about you. Nothing but positive stuff. So, enjoy that. They say there's times and seasons for everything. So enjoy this season of being in good favor with my listener base, because it might all change, John.
Variety is the spice of life.
It is indeed. So that's nice. Thank you. So if you're listening in and you're a fan, as it were, or an avid listener of John, thank you for your nice comments towards him. He appreciates it. Now, let's talk about this Maria Steen debacle. I can remember covering the last election last November. Obviously, it went badly for anybody with any common sense. The council elections, the European elections, things have come and things have gone. But honestly, in my opinion, from what I've seen, I can't remember an anger at something that has happened even before the event, because the election hasn't happened yet. It's not due to happen until next month. But the blocking of Maria Steen seems to have really shooken the hornet's nest, as it were, with the hornets being very agitated and angry Irish people who have just about had it up to their back teeth with being stood upon, trampled upon, deceived, and sold down the river by their so-called government.
I am incandescent with rage. If I were to outline to you the visceral hostility that I have for many of our politicians, your YouTube channel would be taken down and I would be prosecuted. I can say no more than that. But just in relation to Maria Steen, I put pen to paper last night, and I just want to quote some of what I wrote. Just briefly outline a few things. Democracy died in Ireland at 12 midday on the 24th day of September 2025. If Maria Steen were to support the aborting of unborn babies up to full term, she would have received a nomination to contest the Irish presidential election on the 24th of October 2025. If Maria Steen were to support the prescribing of puberty blockers for children, she would have received a nomination to contest the Irish presidential election on the 24th of October 2025. If Maria Steen were to support the fantasy that men and women can change their biological sex, she would have received a nomination to contest the Irish presidential election on the 24th of October 2025. If Maria Steen were to support the destruction of the nation state of Israel, she would have received a nomination to contest the Irish presidential election on the 24th of October 2025. Democracy died in Ireland at 12 midday on the 24th day of September 2025.
Wow. quite a statement. I wish I had a big iron bell behind me to hit one big bong, because that's a very profound statement, actually, and a very sobering statement. Thank you for putting that together. I can't really argue with any of the above. And for anybody that's tuning in from outside of Ireland that maybe is following this loosely, they might be wondering, well, it's a bit much to talk about the death of democracy, but effectively the candidates in this election, while you'll still be given a choice that you can go and vote for, the people that you can vote for have been chosen effectively and have been selected to appear on a very, very limited ballot. I understand there's only 3 people on this ballot, and since 1990, which is 35 years ago, there hasn't been as small a choice or as few candidates on a ballot for an election in Ireland than there is for this one here. So that's not exactly progressive, is it?
Since 1997, the illusion of democracy was given to Irish presidential elections. Up until then, the candidates were all drawn from our political class. They were pre-approved, as are the 3 geniuses that have been pre-approved, that have been approved by our political establishment to contest the upcoming presidential election in Ireland. But let's talk about the 3 candidates for a minute. Catherine Connolly, she wants to introduce a 3rd gender in Ireland. She wants male, female, and another gender. Okay, that's a fact. Believe that's insane, but it's true. Heather Humphreys, she led the government campaign to erase women and mothers from the Irish Constitution last year. Jim Gavin was specially picked by Micheál Martin to keep Bertie Ahern out of the race. He was specially chosen to keep Bertie Ahern. He was specifically chosen to keep Bertie Ahern from contesting the upcoming Irish presidential election. Now, if somebody wants to come on and say that that's democracy,
And let's not forget also, let me slip a non-candidate into the mix, which sounds ridiculous, but for the longest time, Sinn Féin were being very coy about what their plans were in terms of fielding a candidate, and they held back and they held back and they held back, and they said they were going to announce something extremely significant last week, and people were speculating. A lot of people actually speculated that they were going to field Gerry Adams as a presidential campaign. That wouldn't have been coming from too far left of field. But in fact, what they did was they fielded nobody. They ended up getting behind this unholy alliance with People Before Profit and the Greens of this world and the Sinn Féins of this world to back said candidate Catherine Connolly. And they're absolutely salivating at the thought that they could have a left leaning like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. That's what she is, candidate in there who could possibly become the next president. They're actually they're almost euphoric. I saw Paul Murphy. I think he must be back from his jaunt in Gaza. He's up a ladder in his jumper. As token jumper, putting up pictures of Catherine Connolly in a fit of euphoria. I think it was Paul Murphy. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I saw him up a ladder. Maybe he's up in a ladder in Palestine or Gaza. He's actually putting pictures of her up there. I don't know.
We want a president of Ireland. We want a president for Ireland. We don't want a president for Gaza. In relation to Sinn Féin, or the new Irish Communist Party, Gerry Adams is old Sinn Féin. He's not Sinn Féin. He doesn't belong in the modern Sinn Féin party. The modern Sinn Féin party can't define what a woman is. Mm-hmm. That's, to put it simply. And we have to try and influence the Irish diaspora in the United States of America and convince them before they send their millions back to boost the coffers of the new Irish Communist Party that still call themselves Sinn Féin. We have to persuade these people that the Sinn Féin that they wax lyrical about is dead and gone. It's dead and gone. The modern
Yes.
Sinn Féin are nothing more than a woke globalist mess. They're a globalist wet dream. That's all they are.
Mhm.
Now, they're backing Catherine Connolly because I suspect that they believed, I'd say that their own market research and their own polling had indicated to them that they weren't going to win, that their candidate would not be successful. So they're hoping that by throwing their weight behind the communist from Galway, that they'll be able to kind of claim victory if she somehow wins.
Mhm.
But to be totally honest with you, I won't be voting for any one of the three, any one of the three of them. Absolutely no way. Right? It's okay.
On that subject, I wanna play a clip from a chap that's probably the listeners to this channel will be no great fan of, but he did something redeeming this week in that he backed Maria Steen as a presidential hopeful, Michael Healey Ray. He appeared last night on a show, and the host of this show, I think his name's Cudahy, was very abrasive and aggressive towards certain presidential campaigns over the last few weeks. Some would say downright rude and arrogant, but give some people a pass, was very hard with other people. But he had Healey Ray on last night. Now, this is only a minute, and he's asking Healey Ray why he backed Maria Steen, and I believe is it his brother Danny Healey Ray? He backed her as well yesterday, I think, or the day before. So they were at least giving her a bit of a crack at the whip. So let's hear what's said last night, and this is interesting. I want to pick this one apart. Just a 1 minute clip. Let's hear what he was asked and how he replied last night.
That people who would have never actually thought of her before, they would have thought to themselves, this lady, she's presentable, she's articulate, and she was denied an opportunity because a number of people, and the word I'd use again, were too mean to write their names on a piece of paper. And what harm would it have been? It doesn't mean they would have been supporting her campaign. All they would have been facilitating was democracy. And at the end of the day, we're all Democrats. We live and
but maybe, unlike you, they don't
share
her views. As you say, you wouldn't have done it for anybody. You did it for her because you share a lot of her views, or you would have been fellow travellers when it came to different referenda maybe over the years. And maybe those independent senators that you're talking about, that you say were too mean, actually just looked at her views and said, you know what, I don't share those views. So the rationale that applied to Michael doesn't apply to me.
I'd argue that with you. But obviously, when they're not here to talk, I won't go naming people. But there are people, independent senators, who would have shared her views, who would have shared platforms with her in the past, and they were too mean to come out and vote.
So interesting, this exchange. There's a lot of undercurrent in this, John. First of all, Healey Ray talks about democracy and nominating versus endorsing a candidate. Just because you nominate someone to run in the race does not necessarily mean that you align with any of their views whatsoever. You don't have to line up with them. You're simply saying, in the interest of democracy, I'm prepared to put this person into the race to at least give the Irish people some choice. Okay. Cudahy then makes an interesting statement, and whether or not his researchers obviously didn't do their job very well yesterday. But he said to Healey Ray, the only reason that you nominated her was because she aligned with some of your views, and you would have been, lined up in previous referenda. But if your views had been wildly different, you wouldn't have nominated her. But yesterday, or the day before, my head's all over the place with times, but Independent Ireland, we talked about this the last time you were on, that they had 4 votes that they could have given to Maria Steen, which they did after a meeting with her this week. Now, one of the things that was put forth after that was that one of the members of Independent Ireland, Ken O'Flynn, who's a gay man that has got married to his partner, Maria Steen opposed that. So she would have been diametrically opposed to what he's practicing per se, but yet he endorsed her. Does that not blow the whole, you only endorsed her because she lines up with your views out of the water when you have Ken O'Flynn on the other side of the coin saying, well, actually, you know, she's against what I'm practicing right now. At least she stood against it. But she said she's happy enough to go with the will of the people. Does that not blow that hollow argument out of the water?
Of course it does, but if Paul Murphy wanted to contest the presidential election, I would applaud Michael Healey Ray for nominating him. If he were to nominate him, I would applaud him for doing that. My brother is a prominent Fianna Fáil senator. He is staunchly pro-life, but he didn't nominate Maria Steen because Micheál Martin, the Fianna Fáil leadership, intimidated senators and TDs and told them that if they nominated Maria Steen or anybody else, they would lose the party whip and they would be basically thrown out of the party. And contrary to popular belief, the majority of TDs and senators are not multimillionaires. They're not very wealthy people. They depend on their wages to survive. And people talk about the big money that TDs and senators make, but they forget that an awful lot of that money is spent in their local communities buying drinks and buying lottery tickets and whatever. And a lot of these lottery tickets are very expensive. You're talking 50, 100 euro per ticket. And your vast wages now wouldn't last too long when you have to go around buying tickets and buying, well, I suppose they also buy pints for people and whatever. I mean, that's the way it is in Ireland. You have to go around glad handling people. But
that doesn't last forever either, by the way. That's not something. It's like a footballer's career. If you lose your seat, so if you get in and serve a term and then you lose your seat, well, then that goes out. That wage or that safety net, goes out the window.
Yeah, right. I'm not. Listen, I am totally, as my first comments, the first comments I made now will kind of make it very, very clear that I despise the vast majority of politicians in this country, regardless of what party that they belong to or if they're independents. It makes no difference. I despise most of our politicians. Now, Mr. Cudahy and his ilk, they are lefties, and they just want they really. I'm not talking about Mr. Cudahy in particular, but many journalists now, they're not journalists, they're activists. They are left-wing, extreme left-wing activists, and they don't believe in free speech. They are quite happy with the decision that Micheál Martin made yesterday and that Simon Harris made and the other parties made not to support anybody else, even though that they despise Micheál Martin and they despise Simon Harris. But they're still happy enough because they saw Maria Steen as being somebody who is pro-life. They see her as someone who's pro-life. They see her as someone that doesn't subscribe to their toxic woke ideology. But the sad reality is that they saw her as a threat. She was the bookies' favorite to win the presidential election. If she had been nominated yesterday, she would have won the presidential election because she would have destroyed her other three opponents in any debate that they participated in. But this plan was hatched on the day that the two referendums were defeated last year. This plan was hatched that they weren't going to allow the people to protest. They weren't going to allow the people, they weren't going to afford the people of Ireland an opportunity to cast a protest vote against the government candidates. And here we are now. We have as I referenced on the last podcast, when a vacancy arises in the Chinese Communist Party Politburo, they pick out three candidates, and you have a choice of voting for you, or you. That's it. It's quite simple. It is democracy died at 12 midday on the 24th of September.
Well, this post here, I was going to bring this up, but you cut me off at the pass there. You're thinking the same way. This was put up by Mark Anthony yesterday he was so, the first time it's the first time I've spoke to him where there was such an anger, an irateness in the air, not between each other. I love the guy to bits, but just that what's going on and the way he positioned it was. And if you haven't watched it, go back and watch yesterday's conversation. Anyone that hasn't seen it, go back and watch it. But the way he described it, I think, was that there was this last little glimmer, this last little ray of hope that we could get Maria Steen on the ballot and she could win, like you've said, because she would clean the floor with them. But that was snuffed out yesterday, and he put up a post and he said the politicians, the political classes, and the mainstream media are terror-stricken, for they know that Maria Steen is and will be, or would have been, a formidable force in Aris and for the Irish nation domestically and internationally. Maria Steen would be the Achilles heel for the current government. So at all costs, she was absolutely not to have been on that ballot.
The bookies are never too far wrong, and they're not. They were indicating that she was clearly a leading contender. She was clearly the leading contender.
I followed the bookies. Just on that note, I agree with you. By the way, if you want to get a real feel for the way the wind's blowing, check the bookies, because they do a lot of research, and her odds had been drop. And
200 to 1 to 4 to 1 or something like that.
That's it. Now, if that's not an indication of the way that the wind was blowing, or could have been blowing politically, I don't know what is, because as you say, they're not in the business of losing money where they can help it.
She will. Now, I don't know what her future plans are. Is she just going to go to return to her old life, let's say? But she has the potential to be an Irish Marine Le Pen. If she decides to enter active politics in Ireland, she has the potential to be an Irish Marine Le Pen. She would be a fearsome opponent for our stale, our traitorous, our corrupt political establishment. If she decides to become actively involved in Irish politics, she would prove to be a fearsome leader of the Irish people.
Here's a statement that ties in with that. One of the criticisms of her was, or one of the questions that was being asked was, she left it too late. She left it too late
relevant
to get into the race. And other people have countered that by saying
relevant.
It doesn't matter if she'd have entered the race in January. If they had it in their minds to shut her down and shut her out and lock her out, it didn't matter when she was coming into that
From
race.
The day,
in fact, there's one other post. Sorry, this will tie in with us, and then you can give me your views here. But the Irish Examiner put a post up to say Maria Steen would have electrified an otherwise boring race, but her exclusion is not undemocratic. And then I'll get your views on this. Again, Mark has made a comment to say abiding by something is one thing, but gerrymandering and the use of party whips, instructing councillors that if the instructions weren't adhered to, severe consequences will happen to those who are disobedient and have a mind of their own. That is not democracy. So you've mentioned it, you know, with Micheál Martin. The word on the street was that he said anyone stepping outside of this would face severe consequences. We know that the Simon the Weasel Harris made the same allusions a week or two ago, talking about nominations and one thing and another. So how can you even stand up and have the brass neck, and we know they have brass necks, to say this was a democratic process when you were actually threatening your own party with severe repercussions if they stepped outside of orders or they didn't follow orders? I'm only following orders, Micheál. I'm only following orders, Simon.
Surely, Rick, that's disinformation, misinformation. They were intimidated. Fianna Fáil senators and Fianna Fáil TDs were intimidated by the party leaderships. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael senators and TDs were intimidated by their respective leadership. Mm-hmm. They were intimidated. They were bullied, browbeaten and bullied, and unfortunately, many of them are in need of a spine. They're cowards.
They're invertebrates.
They are cowards. They have no principles. They're just cowards, and that's what's leading our great country at the moment. People that are no backbone, people that are just cowards. They're afraid to stand up and be counted. Now, I know there is great disquiet in Fianna Fáil over the nomination of Jim Gavin. There is great disquiet, and if Heather Humphreys manages to win the presidential election, and she becomes the next Uachtaráin of Ireland, Micheál Martin will be a dead man walking.
She's interestingly dropped her surname. You know that? I don't know if you've noticed it or not on her promotional material. She's not Heather Humphreys. She's just simply Heather now.
Like Madonna and Maradona and Ronaldo.
Or
Two
Oprah.
of them.
Or
Cristiano
Beyonce.
and the original.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beyonce. Oh, good God.
Enya.
Enya, yeah. Heather.
So she's just Heather now. Vote Heather, not vote Humphreys or vote Heather Humphreys. Vote Heather. And again, it just reeks of cheesy American. You know, if you've watched the videos and you see the campaign, you know, Heather for president, Heather for president. It's the, you know, it's just, it's naff. And let's talk briefly actually about this guy, Jim Gavin, because he seems to be, it's all the attention really seems to be going between Humphreys and Connolly. Jim Gavin, who it seems to be as being very heavily chaperoned by Micheál on a personal level. When he appears in public, Micheál's literally on his shoulder. And if any questions are being asked, Micheál dives in. But I think it was yesterday, he actually came out, Martin actually came out and held a press conference to talk about lies and disinformation spreading 6 times faster than the truth, and these scurrilous accusations that were circulating online about Jim Gavin. And then we have this mysterious character, some Irish fisherman living in Indonesia who says he's going to drop a bombshell on the 23rd of October. But after yesterday, he says he's going to dump more information
today.
this coming Monday. So this guy, obviously, I don't know who he is. I don't follow him or pay any attention, but he seems to have caught the attention of the Irish government. I mean, that's some achievement when you think of the millions of people that are out there making posts, John, and all of a sudden he's being referenced.
Yeah, he was named on News Talk a couple of days ago. And he's a formidable character. And I follow him on Facebook. He is formidable, and he lives. Well, I think he goes between. He's between. He's in the US and somewhere else. I think he's in Indonesia. You mentioned there.
I think so. Yeah.
And he is fearless.
I don't know him, by the way, in case he has any dirt on me. If you're listening, Captain Kieran, I'm not. I'm just saying. I'm just mentioning you in the context of what's being said here, because you know, if he claims to be dropping what he says he's going to drop, and Jim Gavin's obviously concerned about it, because apparently he's went to various social media platform providers and asked for all that content to be removed.
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't condone abusing anybody on social media or any other way, but I think that some of the allegations that have been made, they warrant a response. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying they're true or they're false, and I totally condemn the abuse of people online. I totally condemn it. But I think it's important that Mr. Gavin comes out and just kind of says, and just kind of, you know, deals with. There's one little allegation in particular. I think he should come out and say, this is total. This is total crap. This is lies. This is, you know, these are blatant lies. Again, for the third time, to reiterate, I do not condone abusing people on social media or any other way. And if Mr. Gavin is going, he may have to resort to he may have to take legal action against this man, and then let a learned judge adjudicate.
Yeah, but the thing is, as you say, you know, it's like me coming on here. You know, if, let's say you go off today, and then later on I decide to make a video about you, and I decide to come out with a lot of terrible accusations about you, John Wilson, and I say he's this and he done that and he's this and he's that, and you're sitting there going, the first thing you do is say, that's complete rubbish, Rick. I've never done this and I've never done that. I strenuously deny it. I vehemently deny it. But instead of doing that, you start emailing YouTube and saying, remove his content, remove his content. You would probably do that also, but at the very least, you would put out a statement to say, listen, I don't know what's going on in that guy Munn's head, but he's come out with this and this and this about me, and it's not true. It's completely wrong. It's a falsehood, and I strenuously deny it. Now, will you please remove that content?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you would have a civil remedy, but you would also have a criminal remedy, harassment. The individual who posts or posted false allegations can be prosecuted for harassment and can go to jail for a long time in this country.
Yeah. So
there's also the civil option, but unfortunately in Ireland, if somebody puts up a defamatory comment about you on social media and they haven't got two pennies to rub together, how can you go after them? You can't.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, you can get a judgment against them and get a financial reward against them, but how are you going to recover it?
I know. And that's the thing, well, with that, I don't want to get sidetracked by that, but I just wanted, because Gavin seems to be, bobbing along, slightly underneath the surface when it comes to the mix. He's on the ballot, but, he's not really being looked at as a serious contender. I want to look at one other thing that was said, because you talked about harassment and aggravation online, and this is a strange one. Okay, I noticed yesterday, if I can bring this up, I noticed yesterday that attention was being given to a handbag that Maria Steen was carrying. You see this blue handbag? It's blue handbag. Well, the left zoomed in on this like a laser guided missile. You see, they've no dirt on her. No. They've no dirt. So they're going after her appearance. They're going after a handbag. Now, I don't know anything about handbags, and I'm pretty sure you don't either. But someone has tried to identify this to say it's a £20,000 or €20,000 handbag. Okay. And Ruth Coppinger, this person has said straight off the set of Mad Men, with a designer bag costing thousands, where do these privileged Iona types get off from legislating on and dictating the lives of poor working class women? Bye-bye, Maria Steen. That's the best they can do, John, is to attack her handbag. Now, someone has written a response to this saying the Irish left attacking a successful married couple for affording a bag is a new low, especially when many of their own politicians come from privileged and private schools. And let me just finish with this. Someone did a bit of detective work in this, brilliant detective work in this. This is a message that Coppinger put up 7 years ago, right? After attacking Maria Steen about her handbag. Ruth Coppinger, why are you tweeting about fashion? I don't care what someone thinks of my fashion or any woman's or man's fashion. Please tweet about politics every day. Sexism. The internet doesn't forget. There's Coppinger pontificating 7 years ago about don't talk to me about fashion, men or women, talk about politics. Don't be sexist. And then here we have her 7 years later attacking Maria Steen about her blue handbag. Is this a new low? Is that the best they can do, John?
Can you name me a socialist politician in Ireland that's not financially well off, that's not comfortable? I think that answers the question.
It does.
I've yet to meet a poor socialist politician.
Yeah. Or some of the
wealthiest politicians, some of the wealthiest people that have ever sat in Dáil Éireann call themselves socialists.
Well, there you have one of them attacking a fellow lady. She always bangs on about, misogyny and about, men attacking women. There she is attacking one of her own, as it were. And
Rick, you're asking the wrong man now about fashion and about expensive handbags, because.
But that's my point, So it's a woman doing this, and how pathetic do you have to be, John, to be sitting at home with bile seeping from your pores, and so frustrated and angry that you can't get any dirt or any scandal on a certain person, that you have to pour through photographs of them and identify a handbag, then go online and try and figure out what it cost. And as other people have said, you know what? So what? Maybe she's worked and earned it. Maybe somebody gave it to her as a gift. Maybe it's a cheap knockoff from a Sunday market somewhere. It just looks like a designer handbag. What difference does it make? Why are you on about that? And someone also pointed out, as you've rightly said too, if Coppinger, whatever way you say her name, wanted a handbag like that herself, sure, it's only 3 or 4 months' salary of hers at the Dáil.
when Ruth Coppinger, if she ever goes to when she walks out into sunshine, the sun disappears right away.
It disappears behind the cloud.
It disappears behind the cloud. That's all they had. Maria Steen, she's a very dignified lady. She never got angry. She remained calm at all times, despite the brickbats that were thrown at her. She remained dignified, even in the speech she made outside the Dáil yesterday, her concession speech, where she accepted that she wasn't going to get a nomination. She was ultra dignified and gracious. And just to reiterate what I said earlier on, if Maria Steen decides to become involved in active politics in Ireland, she will cause shockwaves throughout our political establishment. I was going to use another adjective, but I won't. She's a dignified lady, a wonderful lady. She would have been a credit to the people of Ireland. She would have been an exemplary president of this great country. But unfortunately, we're now going to be left with. We now have a choice of 3 people that will be illegitimate presidents.
Curly, Larry, or Mo.
They were talented people. Please don't insult the 3 Stooges. No, I wouldn't insult them. I wouldn't even insult them up inside, or just no. In the same way, Rick, that you continue to call Micheál Martin, that sounds humorous. There's nothing humorous about that individual.
I remember the last time we spoke, you had a request. You said, would you please stop calling him that, call him the traitor? And then I've been thinking about that, and I've been thinking, John, I can't, because if I start referring to the traitor when I'm talking, it can apply to maybe any one of 24 people. So we'll have to narrow it down a touch. And speaking of narrowing it down, okay, we'll finish on this one because there'll be more of this to come. The last time you spoke on here about a week or so ago, we were talking about this. We're talking about Independent Ireland backing Maria Steen. You believe they're going to do it. They're going to, and they did.
I knew they would.
You also talked about voting.
Yeah.
And I think your words were, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was, for the first time in forever.
Over 40 years.
Forever. I'm not, if the candidate's not on there, then I won't be going out. I won't be voting. But there seems to have been this tidal wave overnight. There were talk of this, I believe, premature talk of spoiling the vote, because we didn't know until yesterday that Steen would not be on the ballot. So that was the last ditch. She's not on the ballot. It's down to 3 now.
Yes.
Massive campaign seems to be underway, at least online, and it does seem to be picking up momentum. That many people are so incensed that they will be going to the polling station and putting in block capitals Maria Steen with a big X beside it. That's it. The huge Spoil My Vote campaign. Will you be staying at home, or will you be participating, if you don't mind me asking?
On mature reflection, I shall be going to the polling station on that date, and in big block capital letters, I shall be writing in Maria Steen, and I shall be then folding the voting paper and putting it into the box. And I encourage everybody else to do it. I want to see the highest number of spoiled votes that there ever has been at an Irish election. And I think that will send a very clear message to our traitorous, quisling, subservient government. When I say subservient, I mean to the EU, to our EU masters. I want to see the highest number of spoiled votes ever recorded in an Irish election.
If you wanted some bookie odds, now that you can't get them, for Maria Steen, if you were a gambling man or woman, or if you're listening to me now and you fancy a flutter, it might be worth getting odds on whether or not this will be the largest number of spoiled votes in Irish electoral history. I think you could make a pound or two of it. And in some small way, after I spoke with Mark yesterday, a lot of people have watched that video, and the comments almost universally underneath that were, you know what, I wasn't going to bother. I wasn't going to partake in this, but damn it, I am going out and I am going to spoil my vote. There was hundreds, if not thousands, of people underneath that were saying that. And I believe after this one goes out, it's going to have the same effect. So in some small way, okay, in the grand scheme of the world and the universe, okay, in some small way, I believe we're going to make some kind of a difference. And let's not underestimate this. Writing Maria Steen on an X on spoiling your ballot will not add her to the campaign. They will not. No. But what can happen is that this could be highlighted on the world stage. At least you can't not report on it if it's a landslide of spoiled ballots. If, say, more people spoil their ballot than actually legitimately vote, you can't suppress that kind of horrendous publicity. And you can't suppress that. And I believe if nothing else, if it's sticking two fingers up to the establishment as a huge group, not a few people online talking, I'm going to do this and then they don't do anything. If it actually translates, it could be the beginning of something, and it may cause maybe her or other people to legitimately forge forward as some kind of a genuine opposition party.
I also want to see a nationwide protest. I want to see a national protest in Dublin on the day that the illegitimate president is going to be sworn in. Okay, that's number one. And I've always said that we are one charismatic, articulate leader away from a populist revolution in Ireland.
Yep.
I believe that Maria Steen may just be that leader.
She's got to be thinking about it. She's got to be thinking about it. She said she's been privileged to have ran. She's been privileged to be part of it. But now she's privileged. She's going to go home and she's going to go back to the kids. But she's got to be thinking.
Yeah. And you also spoke about we spoke about bookies and the bookies odds on Maria Steen having dropped considerably. I'm also saying that I believe that Erica Kirk will be J.D. Vance's vice presidential candidate in the 2028 United States presidential election.
On a tangent, yep, it could well be.
Anybody has a couple of euro, and I'm not a great, I've never bet in a bookie shop in my life, but anybody with a few bob, it might be no harm to win and put a few euro on Erica Kirk being J.D. Vance's vice presidential candidate in the 2028 US presidential election.
We not only give political commentary here, but we give some tips if you fancy a flutter. I'll tell you a story about me and the bookies, right? When I was much younger, in my early 20s, the only thing I ever bet on was the World Snooker Championship. That was it. And from around 1995, 1996, I reckoned a young Scottish chap called John Higgins was a future world champion. And I backed him in 95, and I backed him in 96, and I backed him in 97. And he came so close. And then I quit all of that in 1998. That was the year I think he won.
Yeah. Can I just say, we spoke about Bible verses before we came live, before we came on air.
We did.
And can I just quote, just to finish off?
Of course you can.
It's a reading from the Gospel according to Luke. It's a clear message for Micheál Martin and Simon Harris et al. No servant can be the slave of two masters. He will either hate the first and love the second, or treat the first with respect and the second with scorn. You cannot be a slave both of God and of money. You cannot be a slave of the European Union and of the globalist elites, and still put the interests of Irish people first.
Amen. What a way to finish, eh? What a way to finish with the good word. And I tell you what, people can't say they don't get it all when they come to this channel. They get a little bit of, bookie action. They get a little bit of the gospel. They get a little bit of political commentary. They get a little bit of everything here. And hopefully, folks, if you've been listening into this conversation, you've enjoyed it. I want to believe you've made it to the end. And if you have, leave your comments, opinions, suggestions below. Let's try and keep the momentum going with this Spoil the Ballot campaign. And of course, cut and paste the link for this. It's so easy to do it. You just cut and paste the link and drop it into WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups. And I know from looking at the analytics, WhatsApp, the stuff goes spreads like wildfire on WhatsApp because you can just hit a button and forward it. And if you're in a group, everybody gets it, and then they can forward it. So cascade it that way. That's just my suggestion. And it doesn't
Amen to that, Rick.
That's all you have to do. Just,
amen to that.
and if you don't like it, but I'll say the opposite. If you don't like the content, ignore it or don't do anything with it. You know, use your own discretion there. But I'll leave that with you folks. Massive thanks to John Wilson for hopping on again this morning. Hopefully you feel a little bit lighter now that you've got some stuff off your chest and vented a tad. It's good to talk, and it's good to get it out there. And people that listen, you know, I think they nod along in some cases. They shake their head in other places. They raise a fist from time to time, but at least we're engaging and stimulating. At least we're trying to be anyway. So thank you for listening. Thank you, John Wilson, for hopping on this morning. And for now, I'm Rick Munn. This is No Risk, No Reward Media, over and out.